Let me be clear. I have brought you all here tonight to strategize how to increase corporate profits and power using the government.
But Stephen, the government's our biggest obstacle.
Wrong, you ignoramus. The government can help corporations. It's the public service and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that are in the way. I'll be perfectly clear. We need to dismantle the public service and increase privatization, but it won't be easy undoing decades of building up the welfare state. Listen closely. That is some good BC bud. Where's my beer?
So Justin, here's how it works if you want to make it big in Canada. We're the best example of conflict of interest there is, and we're good at distracting from it.
There's a revolving door political cycle in Canada. You start off getting a university degree. Law is best, economics is good too, but the goal is to get in with one of the big corporations.
Then when you've moved up the corporate ladder a bit and proved your loyalty, you run for public office.
Once elected, you deregulate and clear the way for your industry while trying to get them government subsidies, tax credits, and contracts.
After a few terms of eliminating as many obstacles to your industry as you can, you retire from politics with a fat lifelong pension, mostly funded by the taxpayers.
Then your industry welcomes you back with a 7-figure salary, plus shares and dividends. And in 5 short years, you go to work lobbying your government connections to further deregulate your industry.
All it takes is one conservative majority. Then we can use omnibus bills to slash and burn social programs and provincial transfers.
The Liberals will run on promises to fix the conservative damage. However, once in power, we cry that we'd like to fix it, but there's no money to.
Because we'll have made so many tax cuts that revenue is short, and we'll use the savings from service cuts to balance the deficit, all while the national debt increases.
So we'll promise more program spending and ensure the debt gets even larger.
Heh, is the national debt on the national credit card?
In 1974, your dad and his Bilderberg buddies at the Bank of International Settlements dismantled the Bank of Canada as a government lending institution. Now, we have to borrow at interest, selling bonds in private capital markets, and ever since then, all levels of government debt have skyrocketed.
Let me be crystal clear. The monopoly of our big banks will always need propping up, so we'll spend over $1 billion failing to rescue CCB and Northland, and then, because the rules were so loose to allow such failures, we'll just deregulate the financial sector further by collapsing the 4 financial pillars of banking, investment, mortgages, and insurance. Later on, during the US mortgage crisis, we can be even sneakier and bail out our banks using the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation to purchase mortgages from the banks to increase liquidity.
Mortgage. Anglophone fools signing their death pledge.
And our banks will take over the Caribbean, creating tax havens.
Then at home, we'll lower our corporate tax rates and increase corporate subsidies and tax credits so we become a tax haven too. US corporations will be dying to merge with Canadian ones just to get our tax rate.
We'll cut back Canada revenue agencies so much that we're actually losing money to tax cheats.
We'll do nothing about tax cheats while creating more money shelters for the wealthy back home, like the tax-free savings account.
Brilliant! Conservative tax cuts and tax credits all around. We'll starve the government beast while private industry flourishes.
It's not enough, you fool. We must also chip away at the middle class and make it harder to end cycles of poverty. What better way than with a goods and services tax nationwide? No matter there's a Liberal-dominated Senate, we'll game the Senate and add a few more conservative senators just to force GST into law.
We'll promise to repeal the GST come election time, but once in power, we'll instead offer to harmonize it.
That's all well and good, Stephen, but we need multinational integration if we're truly to reach the globalization of the New World Order.
Patience, you dolt. I'm getting there. We'll vastly increase the corporate rights and abusive power of our American neighbors with the North American Free Trade Agreement, leading to many job losses and disputes we'll lose like softwood lumber.
We'll win an election promising to renegotiate or even repeal NAFTA, but we'll add 2 new agreements to it instead.
With Liberal support, we'll continue creating international trade agreement after trade agreement to solidify corporate power, especially through the secret judgments of investor-state dispute settlements.
Killing our manufacturing through the incentive to outsource anywhere labor is cheaper, while making buy local and other protectionist measures open to lawsuits and ensuring multinational corporations have as few barriers as possible.
We'll privatize Air Canada.
We'll privatize air navigation. And we'll slash passenger subsidies for Via Rail.
After which, we'll declare half of Via's network redundant and slice the operating grant by more than half.
As usual, in opposition, we'll criticize that move. But when in power again, we'll eliminate all rail subsidies and phase out all support within a decade.
Against the wishes of prairie farmers, we'll privatize the wheat board, and then not even let farmers buy it, but rather sell it for dirt cheap to the misogynist, human rights violating Saudis.
We'll write off 900 million of CN's debt, then privatize it for a third of its value.
But Stephen, it's not really capitalist free market principles if you're using government subsidies and tax credits to prop up favored industries.
You know your f***ing problem? You've never been with the program.
But Justin, won't these policies just lead to increased income inequality, erosion of social cohesion, and solidify the corporate oligarchy?
Let's be clear on the facts. The Conservatives and Liberals will take turns crippling regulators like Health Canada, so industries like pharmaceuticals can cut corners to increase profits.
And then we'll need to hire private firms to test the dangers of new products, which the manufacturers of the product will pay for.
Self-regulation, the most beautiful of conflicts of interest.
We'll pass patent protection legislation to aid foreign pharmaceutical companies and keep generic alternatives delayed.
The Liberals will oppose that legislation and promise to end it. But of course, when we're back in power, instead we'll extend and improve protection.
Hey guys, you want to merge parties?
We are liberals, Thomas. There will be no formal coalition with the NDP.
But we promised to vote with you at nearly every turn.
You'll do that anyways.
I can see how brilliantly this will open up business, but the increase in growth in high-emission industries will have the bloody environmentalists in a tizzy.
At the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, we'll push alongside the US for any carbon emissions limits to be voluntary.
We'll counter that with our Red Book, promising to meet the Rio targets. But when in power, we'll appoint a natural resource minister from Alberta who will block any legislation hampering the oil and coal industries. Come next election, we'll make the same Rio promises and instead slash the Environment Canada budget and declare the Rio targets unreachable. But we'll make other long-term climate agreements, like the Kyoto Accord, and then we won't bother to take any steps to meet those targets either.
By the time we're back in power, we'll just opt out of the Kyoto Accord. Science and the environment will inevitably get in the way of mining and resource extraction, so we'll have to unprotect hundreds of lakes and waterways, defund and close the experimental lakes area, muzzle our government scientists, and demonize and arrest activists and environmentalists.
Brilliant! The demise of the welfare state. I can see it now.
We'll transform the welfare state into the stock market state.
When the Canada Pension Plan gets into trouble, we'll create the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, and we'll slowly allow it to invest in a greater variety of financial instruments while increasing the taxpayers' contributions. This will carry the fund for many decades, paying out less than is being put in, and creating a huge pool of investment money for whatever favored industries we want to pour money into.
When it's our turn, let's be clear. We'll stack the CPPIB with the same CEOs of the companies we're investing in, taking more aggressive and riskier investments. We'll be backing arms companies, drone manufacturers, exploitative mining companies, and the oil sands, all with taxpayer money, until the fund has become so huge a player it can influence global markets and direct foreign development. When the CPP is bursting with cash for investment while paying out less than goes in, we'll raise the old age security and guaranteed income supplement age from 65 to 67.
Guys, all of this is boring. Is there any excitement in politics?
Well, we'll cause a ruckus spending ad money in Quebec on Liberal sympathizers and then prorogue Parliament to avoid tabling a committee report on the sponsorship scandal.
Proroguing? Sponsorship scandal? You call that exciting?
Okay then, we'll have a charity boxing match between you and a Conservative senator who will later be disgraced and charged with various criminal offenses.
Sweet.
And we'll prorogue Parliament to avoid a confidence vote. Then we'll do it again to avoid talking about Afghan detainee torture. Not to mention we'll be the first government in Canadian history to be found in contempt of Parliament.
We'll have massive cabinets, appointing as many ministers and parliamentary secretaries as we can.
In opposition, we'll act conservative and tell everyone we want smaller government. But in power, we'll have the biggest Prime Minister's office ever and expand the number of House of Commons seats by adding 30 more.
We'll have Elections Canada make slick ad campaigns like to get out and vote, without ever making it easier or more enticing to vote.
Then we'll prevent Elections Canada from encouraging voting at all with the aptly named Fair Elections Act. Our $500 million worth of economic action plan propaganda ads will be plastered everywhere, some even referring to programs that don't exist, and putting a positive spin on the oil sands and resource extraction.
We'll keep the party on a short leash, cutting loose Liberal senators and claiming candidate nominations are democratic, while they're really appointments.
And all backbenchers will have to toe the party line.
Brilliant!
The Conservatives will commit election fraud through campaign overspending and robocalls misdirecting voters, sending Del Mastro and Sona to jail, then try to kneecap Elections Canada when they call us on it. We'll become the masters of Orwellian doublespeak, creating legislation like the Fair Elections Act that allows us to skew the playing field unfairly in our favor. We'll kill the long-form census to hide real stats on poverty and unemployment, and against the advice of every police force in Canada, we'll scrap and illegally delete the long gun registry. We'll run on a platform of increased transparency, but then make freedom of information requests more difficult, slow, and redacted than ever. We'll demonize unions and require them to disclose their finances with the unconstitutional Bill C-377, while allowing abuse of the temporary foreign worker program to drive down wages and leave Canadians unemployed. We'll do everything we can to buy votes, mainly by spending infrastructure money mostly in Conservative ridings. Even though crime is down and there is an increasing number of mentally ill in jail, we'll build more jails, increase victim surcharges, and institute failed American policies like mandatory minimum sentences. Not to mention, we'll preside over the largest trampling of human rights in recent Canadian history at the Toronto G20. In a minority government, we'll increase defense spending to buy the votes of our armed forces. Then, when we've got a majority, we'll cut veterans' compensation and slaughter PTSD therapy. But we'll try our best to spend billions on fighter jets while hiding the extra billions it costs to maintain them. Prior to all that, we'll push hard to join the Iraq War with the Coalition of the Willing.
However, we'll refuse to join the Coalition of the Willing, while secretly having our Navy and Air Force back them up.
We'll vote together for extending the Afghan mission. We'll take turns eroding native rights and land claims, doling out their trust money in ineffective and sporadic amounts, ensuring their poverty and lack of health care persists while chipping away at their heritage rights. We'll continuously tag team slashes to the CBC. We love oil sands. We'll unanimously vote to end child poverty in Canada, then take turns doing nothing while the problem worsens. We'll both clamp down on EI payouts, then use the surplus as a slush fund to pay down debt or deficit. In opposition, we'll oppose omnibus bills. In power, we'll enact them. We will create a secret police surveillance state by voting together for the unconstitutional C-13 and C-51.
So, Stephen, what are you gonna do?
Let me be clear as an unmuddied lake. I'm going to be Prime Minister of Canada.
So Justin, what are you gonna do?
I'm gonna teach math in BC.
No, we're gonna make you Prime Minister.
Do I have to give up my trust fund?
But Stephen, to be PM, you're gonna have to learn to smile.
There, how's that? That's a smile, right?
But Justin, to be PM, you'll have to quit smoking weed.
Nah, I'll just legalize it.